that's my question. Vehicle-related purchases just gives us 0 vehicles. And while we're on the subject of vehicles and the transport ban, such a big question, the reason why I personally started the research on the transport ban is because Mr. Booton was the one who said the Hooksett Courthouse is being crossed off, which meant it was going to be closed.
Where are you getting that information?
Right here. You get this?
Well, I probably do, but I'm trying to look. Oh, okay. Is that...
If you go through the packet that I gave you,
I didn't look at that.
up and
that's how it all started.
Started with an article in the Union Leader, February 13, 2009, about the governor's plan would close 8 district courts.
Yeah.
It went to a discussion here about the general idea. It went to Mr. Booton on March 11, 2009, making a report to the council. Paul, you actually had a discussion back and forth. March 14th, 09, Union Leader article, titled Hooksett Court Still Could Be Closed. At the same time, shortly after that, in April 21st, 2009, there was a discussion held at this meeting about the court and the possibilities. And Commissioner Gagnon had asked that, actually stated he would do some research with the Laconia Police Department to see about how they use their van. Went further that there was discussion at subsequent meetings in May about looking at doing at the van, and then going further where it was decided. One thing that I didn't find in the minutes, what I know we discussed, was the information that Dave brought back from Laconia was that sergeants drive that as their primary vehicle in Laconia. They go to the calls. You weren't
Wait a minute, I can't keep up with this. I thought we were talking about the courthouse. How do we get to the...
That's how we got the transport vehicles, by the courthouse being said it was going to be closed. We needed a vehicle to transport prisoners to Concord. So we didn't have to use 2 or 3 cruisers and 2 or 3 people.
So the discussion was based on what the state was, what we
But whose information were we basing it on? And I guess that's the discussion that
Mr.
came up.
Booton was the House representative at the time.
And I believe Mr. Hess got up and said the other night that in no way was it ever stated, and I guess it's been back and, from what I can see now, is that it's been back and forth, and in fact, at the bottom, it says, I'm not inferring anything, I'm simply stating that the Hooksett District Court is lined out.
Correct.
But when before you were on the commission, during the discussion of whether, of the commission saying look into a vehicle, Commissioner Gagnon did some looking into some research with Laconia and how they use theirs. As time went on, we didn't know exactly what would happen in the court, but the discussion was that even if the court stayed open, that as Laconia does with their supervisors, that may very well be a good idea for us to do. So whether the court ultimately, whether the court was going to stay open or closed, was still up in the air, but whether it did or not, that it made sense for us to mirror how Laconia uses their van with their patrol sergeants and to do the same. So
so it wasn't solely on the premise of the court closing?
No, the information that Mr. Hess has is not complete.
It started
with the discussion of that vehicle, and then it went further into when Commissioner Gagnon did his research, what does Laconia use theirs? Because if you go to Laconia, you see sergeants driving the van around. Based on that information, we had 2 issues, if you will. Number one, what would happen if the court closed and we had to take prisoners to Concord on court days when we have them sitting here, and what do other communities do? When the court issue was never resolved 100%, we didn't know what would happen in the budget process. In the discussions, however, of how Laconia uses it, seemed like that was a good idea because it solved a number of issues that we had here, and we wouldn't be doing something that is unheard of, to have a sergeant as a single occupant driving that vehicle, going to the scene of arrest, helping officers, forces the sergeants to go to the scene of arrest, bring the prisoners back, forces them to be there like they're supposed to be supervising anyway. So when the court issue, one way or the other, didn't pan out one way or the other, we didn't know. We still looked at the operational issue of would the van be good for us to use, and that was the primary driving force of the purchase. If the court closed, that would be just an extra that the vehicle would be useful for. If it didn't, it would still be useful for that primary operational purpose.
Now, was there an obligation to go back to either the council or budget committee, the fact that you were purchasing that? Is that what the...
Why?
No, I'm just asking the question. I'm just asking.
You know, I think a lot's been made out of this vehicle because it's something different. But the vehicle has a purpose and a use, and was in the vehicle, coming in under vehicle purchases. I don't see anybody in an uproar because we bought our first ambulance after town warrant said no ambulance. We went out and bought an ambulance. Now we have a second ambulance that nobody's ever voted for, but that's okay. This vehicle is not something that's going to sit out in the parking lot. At least it better not. It's got a purpose. It's got a great purpose,
Yeah.
twofold, if something happens to the courthouse. And I don't think any of us know whether that is going to stay open or close. Hopefully it does stay open and it never is needed. But at this point, it had other issues to it after investigating what Laconia does with it. And that's was a big part of it, not just the transport.
Okay. I'm going to, if it's okay, Mr. Loisel has raised his hand.
Just with regard to that, the minutes of 3/11, okay, where David, I questioned David Booton about, that the courthouse was going to be closed, not going to be closed, and it was on again, off again. And his response, you started answering, reading his response, okay, but you didn't complete it. And I just think that if you're going to read his paragraph, you should complete it, because it basically states that, and that's what, towards the bottom, it says, now we know the governor said that he's changed his position on that. Okay, so the last statement
again,
pretty much...
it's in here.
But you want to read the whole thing, Paul, and it says that the governor has changed his position, but it is still lined out on paper.
Yeah, still lined out,
and
but his position has changed after it's been lined out.
But again, it's in there. That's the whole paragraph. So it's kind of, it is, but it isn't. It might be, and it could be.
Right. So there was no absolute one way or the other.
No. And I'm not saying there ever was, but that started everything.
Yeah.
Plus what was in the paper and everything else, that started the whole thing. Because I guess it's still lined out. That shows that there could be something.
We never know.
We don't.
I guess what I'm hearing is that even in spite of that, the commission took the position that whether or not it was in or out the courthouse, that they were looking at that vehicle, that it was a vehicle that they felt they needed.
Supervisory use vehicle, correct.